This is the QK65, a recent entry into the crowded entry keyboard scene. But when the QK65 came, it changed the game. It showed everyone that an entry keyboard doesn't have to have entry sound and performance. It also put all of its competition on notice. It's so popular that it's always sold out. Now, the same company that was responsible for the QK65 launched this, the Link 65. The Link 65 is an Owlabs board. This means it's higher up on the food chain as a more premium option. However, it's the same size as a QK65, it has similar aesthetics as a QK65, but it costs double. One will question why? Because it's what's inside that counts. Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is Scott K. Today, we're going to be going over one of the most innovative keyboards I have ever seen. This thing, the Link 65 from Owlabs. As mentioned before, the Link 65 kinda looks like a QK65. In fact, this is how I see it. If you compare keyboards to a Pokemon, the first level Pokemon is always more chunky and cuddly and cute. That is what the QK65 reminds me of. It's like a Charmander, but when Charmander starts to evolve, it turns into Charmeleon, loses some of that baby fat, gets slimmer and more streamlined, looks sharper and more serious. And that's what the Link 65 is. If QK65 evolves into a more serious board, then you get the Link 65. Now, I have seen a lot of keyboards in my days, and from entry to premium. And I can tell you, this thing, the Link 65 is nothing like I have ever seen before. The mounting structure is very unique. It's parametric spring mounted. The PCB, I'll show you the most crazy PCB I've ever seen so far. The plate, it's like the Speedo version of plates. And get this. This is the closest thing you'll ever get to a full screwless design. I mean, depending on your configuration, you can actually build this thing without a single tool. It snaps together and locks in together. But in my opinion, what is probably the biggest difference between the Link 65 and the QK65? It's the sound. And here, the Charmander and Charmeleon are completely different. Not in a bad way, just different. So, let's get started. Alright, the Link 65 impresses right off the bat with its packaging. It's a drawer design. I mean, it also looks like a stack of books. I think this is probably one of the more unique packagings I've ever seen. Most premium boards do come in a nice box with a nice presentation, but this, it's something else. And inside these drawers, you can find its components and also its case. Now, let's see what comes out of the top drawer. Well, the first thing you see is this gigantic pack of foam. Yes, it's a thing now. And yes, it's Owlabs. They are famous for foam. So then you also get this PCB. Under the PCB, you get more foam. I'll talk about the color differences later in these foams. Then comes the plates. My sample came with both the flexible PC plate as well as the FR4 plate. Pretty standard these days, but you know. Now, let's get to the lower drawer. You get the case, and it's a great looking case in this cool gray color. Apparently, this is also fingerprint resist ano, but you know what, I think it works. It's a clean and minimal and handsome looking design, and in this colorway, also has a pretty serious look to it as well. Upon closer inspection, you'll notice a lot of small aesthetic details. For example, the front edge is actually chamfered to create a subtle curvature. The rear of the case is also angular, and its weight is clearly accented as well. By the way, Owlabs calls this part the trunk. Speaking of the trunk, it's definitely got some chunk in it. It's a heavy PVD finished stainless steel and has the gorgeous polish. The weight doesn't stop there actually. The entire lower case is actually made of PVD stainless as well, not polished but in matte. It adds a tremendous amount of weight, and I'll show that off later. Overall, I was very impressed with this design. It's minimal but not boring. Alright, this is pretty much where the standard look and feel ends. Let's get into what makes this keyboard so crazy innovative. Oh, by the way, Owlabs includes these little pillow things, and it makes the assembly so much easier and protect your case. So, with the case upside down on the pillow, you start off by pulling off the feet. With the feet off, you can actually slide the rear trunk back and the whole thing comes off. With the trunk off, you can actually see that the daughter board comes pre-installed here. Now, you can flip the case right side up again, and this time you can lift up and disengage the hook, then slide forward to separate the top from the bottom. You can actually see where the case engages here. There's a hook in the front as well as a hook in the back. Once the top is off, you can see the mounting structure in its full glory. So this is an updated version of the parametric leaf spring mechanism that you first saw on the other Owlab board. It's called the spring. But this time, Owlabs changed the location of the rubber pads to the plate itself to make the install easier and also a little bit more stable. And as you can imagine, the spring mounting really does help with that nice and bouncy experience that you might be looking for. So why the spring? What makes this different? Well, let's see. In concept, it's not much different from a standard gasket mount. If you think about it, in a standard gasket mounted keyboard, the plate actually flexes up and down and supports the PCB, the switches, and the plate itself. It kind of works like a spring. The spring mechanism in the Link 65 is pretty much doing the same thing, supporting the internals. However, instead of making the plate do double duty, it's allowing the plate to be just a plate, and the spring mechanism is the vertical support below. This way, regardless of the plate material, you'll always get a nice, consistent, and cushioned typing experience. This is what you call innovation or over-engineering, and it's not a bad thing. Imagine this, if Owlabs started to offer these spring supports in optional different spring rates, you would be able to adjust the softness or firmness. Hey, that's an idea for you guys, Owlabs. Remember what I said about the PCB? It's pretty wild. Check this out. They call this the slip PCB. It's like a sushi roller. It's like taking flex cuts to the extreme. Essentially, each roll is its own PCB, and they're all connected by a ribbon cable. Not only will this do a better job of isolating the keys from each other, it will also impact the sound, and we're going to talk about that later. It can also be had as a solder or hot swap version, and this one right here is hot swap with Kale style sockets. Now the plates. The PC plate looks pretty standard. However, the FR4 plate. Oh, the FR4 plate. I don't know if there's more air in this plate or the actual plate. It's like a G-string of plates. This will definitely have an impact on the keyboard sound as well, and that will be evident in the future. Finally, let's look at the foam. With the Link 65, you get two sets of foam. The black one is a standard pour-on you find in Mr. Suit and also the spring. The white one is new. It's foamed in such a way to allow more open cells. It's less dense and almost see-through. What this does, it allows for more airborne noise presence. I hope by this point you kind of get a gist of where I'm going with all of this. If not, no worries. I'll explain this during the sound test. It won't also be on Owlab's board without the PE foam, right? So it's included. But before we go into the build, a quick word from our sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay is an online service that helps you print PCBs, do 3D printing, or even CNC machining. If you're an aspiring keyboard designer or whatever else designer, you can take your design and simply upload it to get something made quick. Or, if you have the source code for a PCB that you already have and you need a replacement, you can also get that done as well. They can handle all types of PCBs from your simple single layer designs to multi-layer stacks. Beyond PCBs, if you want to try making your own case, PCBWay can machine that as well. Now, a very exciting new service that PCBWay offers, OEM. Instead of just making a single component, you can actually task PCBWay to be an OEM manufacturer and make the whole thing. They can do anything from PCBs to CNC cases to even assembly. And using global manufacturing, they can offer very competitive prices. Is there a keyboard on the horizon? Well, check out OEM at PCBWay. So for this build, I'm using the more airy white foam with the PE foam layer. I realize that these days, foam isn't just a filler to cover up issues. It's being used as part of the keyboard design to shape its sound. So if you like the sound of the board with it, then go for it. For stabs, I'm using the looped owl stabs and decided to go with the open air FR4 plate in this case. I'm sure you guys will ask me to compare this to the QK65, so I did the first build with the same Oil King switches as the previous QK65 build for reference. Even with the crazy PCB, the overall assembly is not any different or more difficult. Once you have this assembly ready, you pop on the rubber nails as they call it, and then you gently lay the entire assembly onto the leaf springs around the perimeter. Hence why I call this a parametric spring mounting versus boards that have springs under the PCB itself. Now, hook on the upper case onto the lower like this. Make sure it's hooked on correctly. You should get a small click as you push down the rear of the case if it was done right. At this time, you can also connect the ribbon cable, it's pretty easy. Slide the rear trunk back onto the case and lock it in, and it actually helps to lock in the upper and lower like this. Then you put the feet back and it pretty much locks down the trunk. Now you are all done. That process is actually very easy and also very quick. As an engineer, I really love the thought that went into all this. For keycaps, I went with the new PBTFans Twist PBT keycaps. Honestly, I think this right here is like a match made in heaven with this gray Link 65. Like, I was floored on how good this thing looked. The cool gray of the case with the keycaps, the yellow accents add a little bit of pop as well. So in my opinion, this is one of my best looking boards hands down. But one thing I did find annoying was that the rear weight or the trunk it's floating, which means when you push down on the top of the case, the keyboard actually tilts. Not a big deal, but have to keep this in mind when installing switches or keycaps. So enough talking, let's take this for a sound test. I'll also give you a bit of the QK65 to compare this to as well. So what is your first impression? For me, these are such different boards in every aspect. I mean, they may have some visual resemblance, but that's about it. The structure, the typing feel, the typing sound, even its weight, completely different. Before I get into technical comparisons, listen to typing test number 2. In my opinion, switch matching to a keyboard is also very important. You want to bring out the best of both the case and the switch. So for this Link 65, I think the SOTC switch is pretty much where it's at. Alright, I hope you can agree with me that this thing, it sounds pretty good, but it also sounds very different from something like the QK65. Why is that? It's because of its component design. Remember when I kept saying about its airy foam, the G-string PCB, and also how the PCB is so segmented? It's allowing for a lot of air and also sound to pass through. When this happens, you're not trapping the switch sounds within the case like a resonance chamber, rather you're allowing it to go freely in and out. The easiest way for me to explain this is like this, especially for you audiophiles out there. The QK65 is a closed back headphone. Imagine the Link 65 as an open back headphone. As the name indicates, a closed back headphone traps the noise inside and doesn't allow for it to really escape. This results in a more center focused sound, like the sound is like in the middle of your head, with more emphasis on lower end frequencies like bass. Really good for types of music that emphasizes lows and mids, like pop and hip hop. On the other hand, an open back headphone is literally open to the outside. This allows for the music to enter your ear as well as escape outside. As a result, this creates a very wide feeling soundstage and more immersive, like the sound is kind of all around you. However, it can't really trap the lower frequencies well, you do get a good amount of bass roll off. So it's great for music that emphasizes highs and certain midtones, like classical, opera, instruments, and vocals. At the end of the day, it's all about preference, but an open back system is typically considered high-end, and many audiophiles do swear by it. And that is what this Link 65 is trying to achieve, a more sophisticated sound through a different approach. So I hope I didn't bore you too much with this random technical mumbo jumbo. However, as someone that places a lot of value in engineering, the Link 65 makes me excited. Not just because of the uniqueness of it or the over-engineering they did into this board. The board looks great, it has top-notch finishing. It has a very soft and bouncy typing feel, as you can see right here. It also weighs 5 pounds, that's over a pound more than the QK65. But what is really cool is that it's also trying to borrow some knowledge from the audio engineering to achieve something different. Call it as you will, but I say this is the most mechanically innovative keyboard design as of late. As usual, if you like this video, please like and subscribe and I'll have more content for you in the future. Thanks.